Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to another happening sponsored by the Associated Student Speakers Program. Because of the hour, I just want to make this short. We have a very exciting program in store for you. Our guest is from San Francisco. He, besides writing many volumes of poetry, is also a publisher, publishes many works. Among his little volumes like this one is starting from San Francisco. His first was the Coney Island of the Mind. And today he has just written, he's been working on it for about the last month, a poem about our new president. And I think that's what he's going to read. When he's done with the poem, he says he'd be glad to answer any questions. And so at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest to campus, Mr. Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
This is a work in progress called the Nixon Cantos. Nixon, Nixon, Bush League President. This is a populist hymn to you and yours. And I begin with your face and come back to your face. For our history is noble and tragic, like the mask of a tyrant, and the mask an actor wears is apt to become his face. Nixon, Nixon, I saw your childhood home on TV, I saw your childhood face. It was the same face, the face of adult America, the face we chose for America, the space race face, the face that sunk 1,000 saipans, the face we all love in the Geritol ads, on Grand Ole Opry, the face of the nation facing the nation on color TV, the electric burner that replaced the log fire, the electric log, the gas log in color with antenna up the chimney. We sit entranced by the burning images on the grid in the bright grate, the flickering faces in the crucible whose light intensity we can turn up to suit, whose vertical image we can adjust so that the lower half of your face matches the upper half. What a marvelous invention, just what we needed. Old blunderbuss face, old circuit preacher face, American Gothic bold face, with italic lips on the teleprinter. I've got to hand it to you, old family friend. Your face hasn't fallen apart yet like some of your liberal presidential opponents. The slack lips and fallen chins betraying the higher ideals of the fine brow. You've held it together somehow after your own fashion, or at least you put it back together in private. Americans love underdogs, and your jowls growled. But your eyes kept their curious focus. You beamed them on the fences. You aimed at the top bleachers and swung and swung and swung, and finally connected with the bases loaded. You're off and running, and the ball is lost in the sun. Nixon, Nixon, will anyone catch it? Where will it come down, fair or foul? The Dodgers may win this year in the draft. The winds are strong in this park. A lot of old hands are ready to hang up their cleats, we hope. This is one national sport we hope is on the way out. The Whittier White Sox are all washed up, we hope. It's time for new Empire umpire and a new Hall of Fame. Throw out a new ball and a new uniform, too. The National Spectator Sport shows more and more dark faces on TV. They can run faster and hit harder than anyone, and there's millions of them out there where they came from. And they all look alike. You're hungry an hour after you eat one. Here they come, blow their heads off. You might be live on TV. Telestar, zap those gooks. Nixon, Nixon. I'm talking to you now from way out here in New Left Field. in the International League. I'm keeping up the chatter like as if I had to back you up for some strange reason. Aren't you really as homey and honest as Uncle Ezra? Aren't you really the good guy at the filling station all my relatives voted for? Aren't you to be trusted really after all these years? Aren't you just the man to buy a used war from? You tell me if it really was a bummer. You tell us if the automatic transmission really had to be replaced. You tell me if the tires were really retreads. You tell us if the warranty was phony. You tell me if the mileage meter really had been turned back. You'd not let us run out of gas a mile from the friendly dealer, would you? Nixon, Nixon. Now that your team's taken the field, things are really tightening up, and there's no relief in sight for you or us. It occurs to me that we're your relief, if you only knew it, mister. We've been warming up in the bullpen for a long time. I'd like to be your catcher for a while so I could send you some secret messages. Will you make some sign if you can read me? But I've never seen a pitcher with a mask before. Very strange, mister. What have you got under it, really? That's what I've been trying to fathom ever since they brought you up from the minors. Mister, did you learn that wind-up with the Whittier Quakers? It's a long one, and one of the most deceptive we've ever seen in a World Series. A wind-up that gives away nothing and telegraphs nothing so that nobody still knows what's coming. We hope not a fast change-up. One wild pitch and it's all over. Your wind-up is so weird. Nixon, Nixon, I seem to be developing a real fondness for you. How I'd love to be cheek by jowl with you, old buddy. How I'd love to get you in my encounter group and discuss inner space with you. And find out what's really behind that hog jaw jug head. We're about to land on the moon's inscrutable face, while yours is just as inscrutable. Maybe you're part Oriental. Maybe we could discuss far out Eastern arts or poetry. Who's your favorite poet? John Greenleaf Whittier. I am thinking maybe it's actually possible to communicate with you. Wouldn't that be a kick? I am thinking maybe it's not too late and not too early, and I'm naively curious why you just can't declare peace. You can do it if Allen Ginsberg can, and you can make it stick, old sticky dick. You could have grabbed the mic right after inauguration and declared it. Think what a hero you'd be with people. Or do you think people are a danger to the public? Whereas they are probably only transceiver mechanisms from some god. Is it red menace that's still stopping you? Probably only someone fiddling with his mustache in a hopeless cellar. Oh, Nixon, Nixon, when you or your ghost announced that the American dream doesn't come to those who are asleep, I stayed up all night to see what would come. Some blue velvet eternity maybe, or Magic Spring 1970, or just probably West Point, New York, the American dream in all its glory. American wet dream over you. And us riders on the earth together, above which our own Roman emperors of space are about to signal the end of the Christian era by finally proving your God exists nowhere up there, God's long nose still not in sight, and the only God of life on earth, consciousness itself, and love, the fourth position. But I dreamt of myself curled up on a big bed in the same position as my dog, head tucked under tail, sleeping through life, hiding from you in Orange County or the internal combustion city. I don't know why I'm telling you all this, except maybe the curled up image of self and dog is the image of paranoid America itself. The Vietnam albatross still flapping its wings around your neck, oh Uncle Ahab. And other albatrosses caught in the rigging of your ship, voyaging continually abroad in search of monsters to destroy. Great white whales turned red in the international waters of paranoia. Unless you let it, our free yellow submarine can't help you. And you may lose your life like Ahab in China seas. Who stole all the Kennedy $50? Is it a conspiracy? Nixon, oh Nixon, I've got the talking blues. I think I'll sing the Star-Spangled Banner in the dawn's early light. Do housewives dream of you? Are you sexy? Who can tell? And anyway, it's irrelevant, except for what you might do by way of sublimation. Our fate depends on which of your fingers itches, and thy hand is fire. Nixon, Nixon, Enigma Nixon, your nowhere eyes tell the story of America. Are you the 55-year-old virgin, or are you Machiavelli smiling? I think at least you've gotten over the pink eye you had on the Un-American Committee. I don't want you to be the electric sailor. The leaves are green in Whittier today, but DDT is killing the pelicans, and sea lions don't normally drink oil, and their ecosystem is our own. Hudson River related to Hunters Point, and the Colorado River empties into the Viet Cong Delta. Zap those spooks and niggers won't win. Nixon, Nixon, the revolution is coming, the TV is burning, the gooks are still coming over the hill. You don't need spy planes to see them. You need a third eye. You need one right in the middle of your forehead to comprehend them. There's a mystic eye in the detached top of a pyramid on the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States, on the reverse side of the American dollar. You don't know how to look through it and maybe missed what's really happening over here. Do Quakers love all sentient beings? Outside the White House gates, citizens without hats wait in the sun. Is it true Quakers don't believe in quakes? What kind of Quaker are you? Like on the Quaker Oats box. Don't rock the Mayflower batters up and pull me a homer into the daisies. Only you run for me. I'm too old for all that. Have a good trip, my son, and we'll watch the store, my son, my son. Nixon, Nixon, burning bright in the forests of the night. Did he who made the lamb make thee? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? I am trying to fathom it. I am trying to figure out what, if anything, makes it tick and turn over or on. I am trying to dig what freestanding flowers you sprang up out of. Where is the real country of your real heart, if it exists? Where is your real hometown, which is the hometown of every American run over by the freeway? I got lost on the clover leaf and never found it, but I know it really exists. It's a state of mind. It occurs to me it may be the state of mind of America. I've never seen it, but I know it's there. I know there are 6 supermarkets, 4 drive-ins, 16 filling stations, and a college where they teach what you learned. How much time did you actually spend quaking? Frozen soul of America, who will cling to the wreckage? Nixon, Nixon, black power's at bat. And I sit in the bleachers eating Cracker Jack and reading the whole newspaper column by column, trying to discover where you're really at. Every head has got you in it now, old swivel head. I read the stories and find out nothing. Eisenhower is dead, Eisenhower is dead, and Nixon sails alone around the world. Nixon says his bathtub not full of gold water. Nixon says no public hangings for hippies, they don't go to ball games. Nixon says sex education not a communist plot. Nixon says this and Nixon says that, but what, as usual, does he really believe? His face still has many mouths, and maybe if he turns around, there'll be another face on the back of his head. The two masks of comedy and tragedy in a real TV thriller. The living theater is in the streets. The war is a happening produced in the theater of operations, and freedom is no breakfast food. Concentration camp USA is not a poetic image, though this psalm be fraught with freedom. Nixon, sweet Nixon, have you had any sweet dreams lately? Have you had your 5 dreams per night? Have you ever looked them up in Freud? Or do you prefer astrology, which enables us to believe the fault is not in ourselves but in our stars? It occurs to me if you had any mystic tendencies, you'd probably go for Ayn Rand. Or maybe even Gurdjieff, the Baron Munchausen of the mystics. You've probably got that kind of authoritarian psyche well hidden. You may be full of all kinds of hostility behind that Ed Sullivan smile. Who knows? You seem so far away from everybody on TV. A no man's land between thee and me in plain speech. Can't you speak for yourself in Quaker plain speech without reading it? When I took my orals, I had to, but that was in another language, and besides, the wench is dead. I finally realize you're a very strange man. Not too strange, I hope. Like when you say, we only warn once. Oh, the vast, sad camp, which is Washington. Nixon, Nixon, I keep cutting back to your face as if it's all we've got to go on. Mon Général once said in a Kennedy he saw the smiling face of America, but in Johnson he saw the raw face of America itself. And I am thinking with you, old slick dick, we finally see no face at all. Behind the great seal of the United States we see an index of night in it and nothing more, and the poets in their sad likenesses can't help you, Dick Whittier. If you want to open the door to a room with a lot of other doors, why don't you open the doors of perception? The hinges in the corners of your eyes are creaky. They need to be cleansed with rust dissolvent. You've been blinking at the wrong things maybe all these years. Probably your eye sockets need re-drilling. Let in more light. The river of light is within us. Nixon, oh Nixon, you've got a free airplane. I want you to take a little free trip, a little trip with Alice. I'll lend you my cabin in Big Sur, and you can sleep out under the pulsars meditating answers. You can keep in touch by Telestar or Edgar Casey. Have you ever tried the full lotus position? You'll have to take off your establishment shoes to do it. You're not much older than I, but about 5 generations apart. I can't help it if you got old and serious a long time ago. Why is it presidents have to be flying mummies? Old men in dying trajectories who never could make it at the Fillmore Auditorium or Zen Mountain Center. I'm not ready to join you, Daddy. Nixon, oh Nixon, joy begat joy, love begat love, hate begat hate, and I am dying, meester. That's the story of the world, and these are the strophes and anti-strophes of ecstasy and despair in this strange eclogue to you. But I'll not be your Virgil, heralding you, a modern Emperor Augustus, who recognized the empire had reached its natural limits and therefore declared universal peace, forthwith withdrew all armies overseas pronto, thus bringing the age of iron to a clanging close and ushering in the golden age. Unless you do it, O Quaker King. Nixon, oh Nixon, one would think the wind still whispered Latin phrases when whoever wrote our dollar bill took its not-so-mystic motto from Virgil's messianic eclogue, wherein he saw a new great age was dawning, but wherein he conveniently skipped the Stoic Sibylline prophecy that the way the Iron Age would end was in a great conflagration, after men had first suffered a great moral decadence. O Emperor, the world's great age begins anew. No one will have to work, the trees drip honey, sheep and lions will lie down together, and there'll be no need to dye wool, for the rams in the meadows will change their own wool's colors to saffron, and the serpent die forever, as a new race of long-haired, golden-haired progeny descends from on high in Jefferson airplanes. Oh, Quaker Emperor, I hope you do not turn out still to have the Jupiter complex with the idea you can win war by just throwing enough thunderbolts and thunderbirds. Jupiter nods and Olympus shakes. I hope he's not you in disguise, old Nick. There's a great doom-shaped gray bomb head in the sky. It's a mouth. Its mouth is made of merde, and it's saying fuck you to humanity and love. The lights are burning late in the Kremlin these nights, trying to figure out how to exercise that same head, which they see over them too. A huge paranoid vision of imagined hate with face of the nearest neighbor whom we don't understand, whose silence and smile we imagine to be forbidding. In Moscow tonight, there's music on Borodin Bridge, nevertheless, and even today love slides down the sides of the streets. Oh, dreams of sweetness, of face, oh, words like traces of love. Nixon, oh, Nixon, I'm not asking you to turn and live with animals. I'm not asking you to commune with trees, although what times are these when a conversation about a tree is almost a crime because it includes so many silences about so many crimes? I'm not asking you to squat and chant the great Prajna Paramita Sutra, although you might get high and learn something like why rivers flow only one way. It's an oriental secret which might give you a clue to the geopolitics of Vietnam. I'm not asking you to take off your shoes and displace your second-hand God. I'm not asking you to eat your own fig leaf. I'm just asking you whether you really believe you can serve the people and the state at the same time. I'm just asking you whether you really believe you can serve liberty and authority at the same time, or tell the truth and lie at the same time. Will you ever invite the Living Theater to the White House? They might help you. They might help you pretend to be yourself on TV. So lonely it hurts. Nixon, oh, Nixon. Presidents are known to be lonely, and vice presidents even lonelier, and you're vice president forever. And you're probably always longing all the time to be loved by the very same people who loved and hated Kennedys. You probably a loner for always, the kid on the block who always hung around the edges of the crowd wishing he were the white-haired boy enrolled at Harvard at age 1. Yes, you're lonelier and stranger the longer I look at you in all the disguises of your face. Stranger and stranger, said Alice. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are both dead now, and look who turns out to be Hamlet. But let us pray the rest will not be silence. Nixon, oh Nixon, when I saw you on TV last night again, stumbling through Vietnam, you just didn't look like you believed who you were. You looked just like your pictures, but was it all a strange, mad dream you were lost in, moving through the motions of some nightmare or daymare in which you suddenly found yourself in front of 5 million people in your pajamas, worried whether something was showing down there? Military might must be disguised to be effective. It occurred to me your warhead was showing. My poet's shadow stitched to you won't stand many more bullshit speeches like that one. I had a strange feeling you were speaking in a completely empty room. I had a strange feeling the words were blurred on your page as if you needed glasses but refused to wear them in public. Bifocal lenses might confuse you symbolically. Your eyes have seen the Puritan glory, and there's no use confusing the issue. You should have been a Methodist preacher. In fact, you are. I know, when you were a kid, you once worked as a barker for a Wheel of Chance at the Slippery Gulch Rodeo in Prescott, Arizona. You were never no lip service American. You were always a self-starter, a fighting Quaker. But you don't believe in the total assault on the culture, and you don't believe revolution has become the only possible form of culture. You're a true record of where winter is today. Nixon, oh Nixon. There's a wasp's nest on Plymouth Rock. And it's not a rock group. But don't worry, the rock is rigged by the Board of Orange County Education with pioneer ERIC guidelines in a great leap backward into a new military-industrial dark ages, with scenes of multimedia mass paranoia as in Hieronymus Bosch, Death and Sensuality, wedded in buggering napalm natives, cunts quivering in the ultimate orgasm of death, smoking mind of America on fire, Berkeley students are burning. Nixon, oh Nixon. I stayed up all night writing this to you. I saw the dawn come up over San Francisco. The Bay Bridge lights sparkled in the first dawn. A dawn wind was rising. The guard was changing in the Presidio Mutiny Stockade. At City Hall, they were celebrating the 1906 earthquake. Emperor Aliotto, the mayor with the mafia name, and his Negro urban affairs director, whose name is Rebel, were much in evidence. But the evidence was all against the earthquake. It just wasn't going to happen. No shake up here, and no revolution either. Believe me, baby. And I have my director to see to it souls on ice won't melt. Nixon, Nixon. It was a long night. And now I'm flying across the swinging rock face of America, between the wings of a huge plane, still writing to you. But I have a weightless feeling you're not listening, old flappy tongue. Old Dickie Bird, give us some sign if you hear us, except that baleful smile. I'm not asking you to solve my personal pathological problem, or I'll blow up the plane or take it to Cuba. The pilot points out we're passing right over Rock Candy Mountain, not too far from the Great Salt Lake. It occurs to me you've probably flown this route so many times you don't even look down anymore at the great, hard, sweet tit of America. Your land is my land, but the Golden Spike was driven by chinks. We wouldn't want you to fall into the sweet and sour sauce. We won't put salt on your tail yet, but hurry, hurry. We don't have to accept the facts of death forever. Oh, Nixon, Nixon. I've circled through your America. I've cycled through your America and also through my America. And I've seen the faces. Let us now praise unfamous men, the people, yes and no. I've hitched back and forth across America looking for a face. I once rode a freight train from Joplin, Missouri to Chattanooga and saw your face on a siding. It was the face of the yard dick, rounding up the sterno bums and busting them. I didn't know the difference. I was a college kid and thought it was fun, the whole world of fraternity rousing. But now I remember the face in the dark by the tracks, the dark jowls, and the hard eyes like yours, old American dick. Old bat boy to presidents. Now is the time for the seventh inning stretch. Now's your second or third chance to be truly great. Walk softly and carry the big stick in your pants. For the world might still end in a Freudian slip. Old slippery dick. Please be extra careful with our bats and balls. I'm just beginning to see why Norman Miami Mailer picked you for a winner way back then. I'm just beginning to see why he really digs you, Deadwood Dick. You've turned yourself into a lightning rod, hoping to turn the weather of the world into a public utility for your own uses. Good luck, sweet rock candy dreams. You might yet move the magic mountain. We are daily faced with the miraculous, and the air is electric with hate, and the air is alive with love, and we are charged with loving.
Mr. Ferlinghetti realizes that many of you have 1 o'clock classes, so at this time, if you'd like to, get up and leave, and the people who are standing want to take their seats, that's fine. And Mr. Ferlinghetti said that he will, answer any questions that you have about the poem or about anything on your mind. So we'll just wait a couple minutes to let the room settle down. That was beautiful. That was great.
It's about a half hour.
What?
About 25 minutes.
Oh, I'd say it was. Yes, Al.
Is there a place where one guy out in the corner? I spend a lot of my time at the City Lights editorial office. I'll be up there We're at the he doesn't like us. Well, he's got very strong. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sure. You're German. Don't worry, I'm German. Larry here?
She should be right here somewhere.
There's going to be
wanted to have a quick word with you. I talked to the South Vietnamese ambassador. He said he can speak here on the 28th at noon. I was just wondering if we could get the Grand Ballroom Forum.
I'll have to check.
All right. Could you get back to me this afternoon? It's kind of
Probably not. I'm with Mr. Ferlinghetti.
I
So
see.
if you
What
want to
about
talk
this
to Alex,
evening?
if you want to talk to Alex, or if you want to talk to Mark Greenfield, you could tell them and see what they could do.
They could try to arrange it. Are they up in the office now?
Alex might be.
Alex?
Alex White.
Alex White. Okay. If not, I'll try to get to you
Can I
tonight.
use this from our vigil for 1 second to just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For those of you who were here for a silent vigil, just for 1 second, what we done, or whatever happened, we had a silent vigil because for the first time in a long time, this was, to me, the most symbolic type of action. If you didn't know, 3 people so far, 2 of them enrolled students holding reg cards at UC Berkeley died. They're dead. And today, there are approximately 300 or more National Guards on the UC campus. If you wish to walk to your psych or philosophy class, there are guardsmen with undraped bayonets escorting you and looking out. So what we've done is the coalition in the past few weeks has done a wonderful job, but just because of how I feel, I was interested in something more nonviolent and something that could coalesce, unlike the coalition, the conservatives, the moderates, and us, whatever we are, together and try to develop a sense of community at UCLA, which is not a bureaucratic trap with bureaucracy. I'm sorry, coalition. But the fact is, they've done a good job, but I think we could do more. And to coalesce the positions, if we tone things down, where'd you go? If we tone things down, I think instead of working real low, if we tone things down, instead of wanting to throw ROTC off campus, we could tone it down a little, like make them like an everyday off-campus club. But I'd like to organize something, and Mr. Ferlinghetti already used the Freudian symbols, so that's not necessary. But what I'd like to do is, I don't really want to be the organizer, because I'm hassled already. But the thing is, if we could meet after this, or else to continue this feeling of community and a silent and living, touching vigil every day, or whatever we could do, I'd really appreciate it, and I think lots of people would. So for people who have ideas and people who have feelings, which means people, we can call ourselves the people who care, if someone wants a title, or else you can, if they ask for the name of your organization, just print your name on the form, which I had to fill out for a vigil. Okay, so now it's not time to talk politics in my way. It's Mr. Ferlinghetti's floor. And let us power. What I'd like to do is, I don't know exactly what to do. With the coalition, I found that we could organize people to sit in, but nobody knew what to do. In the same way, I left the Regents meeting when they started chanting, "Fuck Reagan," because it just reminded me, we're college students with heads on our shoulders. Let the newspapers use that for other people that are going to be doing different things than us, but we don't need that. And I don't have to tell you cliches, because, well, see, now I forced you to listen to me. I'm sorry, but otherwise, we don't need cliches. We've got our feelings and we have thoughts. So perhaps we could meet in Meyerhoff Park afterward, and any suggestions, and we're all leaders. Thank you.
At this time, if you have any questions, I think the easiest, because we can't get any mics in the audience and it's a crowded room, if you'd stand up and just say it as loud as you can. I guess Mr. Ferlinghetti might recognize you. You have any? Why don't you stand up and say it as loud as you can? No, so the other people in the room can hear you. I know that you can.
He said I was going to answer questions about the poem, not me. I thought you want to have a discussion about you know, like the way I feel about the poem is I don't have anything to say except my poetry, in a way. Like, if it's important, if I figure I have an important thought, I put it in the poem. And
When it comes real easy to you, like you could just write it out, or did you have to really think about it?
I had to really think about it. No, but that's a third draft, and it's been going for about a month. Yeah. You said some of our brothers have died in Berkeley, and what thoughts do I have on the subject? Well, again, I say after that poem, I think my thoughts are self-evident. I mean, what can you say at this point except sorrow? Yeah. It's my paranoid hang-up. Did I say I hated Nixon? I was really trying to be open-minded with him. I mean, it could have been much worse. You should have seen the first draft. But I realized that it's just this is exactly what I had in mind when I started on the second draft, that there's going to, a lot of people say, oh, you're just paranoid, see, and so forth, and you're a nut, or you're some kind of like your mind is a freak factory, man. And to avoid that, what ends up is the poem becomes much more just all the way around. I thought it was a just poem. After all, he had it coming to him. And I was very mild. Well, it takes time. Like, take a couple of months to get it out. Yeah.
Edgar Casey said that the earth changes that will be brought about are going to be as a result of bad vibrations going on. I'd like to know what you think about Edgar Casey's thing.
I don't know. It's I haven't read much Edgar Casey. I mean, I generally know what he's about, but the whole idea of vibrations is such a stylish concept these days, you know, and like astrology is very stylish, and our Gurdjieff groups are very stylish in certain circles. There are various kinds of Gurdjieff groups. That reminds me, in the poem I was having a hard time deciding whether to have Gurdjieff in there or not. I call him the Baron Munchausen of mystics, because there seem to be very widely differing kinds of Gurdjieff groups in this country. Some have very definite neo-fascist tendencies, and others have very definite anti-fascist tendencies, and are very peaceable and full of love. But I went to an open meeting the other night in San Francisco of a group which may or may not even have been a real Gurdjieff group. I was told later by someone in another group that it wasn't. This was an Alec Horn group, presumably. And everyone was full of hostility and arrogance. And very authoritarian, but I've been told this isn't necessarily so. As for Edgar Casey, I mean, the thing about him is everything he wrote was kind of an elaboration of his own intuitions and instinctual sensitivity to vibrations on Earth.
Well, vibration is just the word. What I mean is like the Earth just getting sick of all the crap that's going on top of it. And like it's going to do something, nature's going to do something bad.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that, but you get that from a lot of different type activity centers now, or groups, or thought centers right now. I get that from, like, if you go to the Esalen Institute at all, you get many people at the seminar that are saying this in their own terms in whatever field they're in, whether it's sociology or psychology or behavior psychology or whatever. So.
I hope you can forgive this as a slight interruption. You all know about the thing that happened last night, the Berkeley guy dying. Some of us think that it would be a nice gesture on the part of the administration of the university if they would lower the flag to half-mast. And so there will be a group going over to the chancellor's office as soon as the rally downstairs breaks up, which will probably be about the same time as this group breaks up. So if any of you would care to join us, we'll wait downstairs for a while, and then if you don't see us there, the chancellor's office is on the second floor of the administration building, the main wing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Who was Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? No. Was it representative?
Well, it's from Hamlet, of course, but there's a play now called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and which,
Did they represent someone? That's what I meant.
well, if you take Rosencrantz and Guildenstern not as scoundrels, then they could represent the Kennedy brothers.
Well, you said before that your third draft was mild. Well, why do you have to impose a self-censorship
What?
Finish your thought, what you said. Why do you have to become mild?
Oh, it didn't become mild. I mean, it's. I thought I explained that. The reason it didn't become mild, but I tried to balance the statements so that I wouldn't be attacked and vulnerable to people who just say, well, he's some kind of paranoid nut. Huh?
Why? Why when you're writing or creating, have a fear of what someone else is
Oh, no, there's no fear involved at all. No fear involved at all.
concerned with the judgment of your work?
The idea is to get it across to as many people, persuade as many people as possible to your point of view. It's a matter of communication. Like writers are supposed to be in the communication business. But the trouble is, a lot of them won't admit that, and most poets never become writers. It's too much work. But it's not a matter of fear. I mean, I didn't take a thing out of that poem that was in there as far as anything against Nixon that I felt. There was nothing taken out from the first draft onward. There was a lot of stuff added where I kept coming back to his face, trying to see something good in it, where I see things good in it. I mean, so I'm just being fair. Like, there is a paranoid hang up there. You can look at two people, or you can look at someone's face, and depending on what clothes or uniform or hat he's got on, the face takes on a completely different connotation. Like you see a California highway patrolman in a space helmet and guns hanging all over him and so forth. Immediately the face takes on all these connotations, where you've seen the same guy fishing on a pier on his day off. I really don't think you could spot him. I mean, it's very easy. I mean, naturally in radical circles you say, oh, I know a pig anywhere. But it's really not that simple. And the more you get into it, like the more you look at Nixon, the stranger and stranger he gets. Really an enigma. And if I could think of anything stronger to say against him, I'd still put it in the poem, like maybe I haven't reached the last version yet. Yeah.
I don't know how to say this, but I mean, I find myself in this university, and I don't know, you're out at the university, you're Big Sur and other things, but I find myself forgetting how to think, and I find myself just, I hate to use these terms, but I think it puts it very well, that like an exam is the rubber on the buck of education, which prevents conception of an idea on a fertile imagination. And I don't know, I just wonder if you can...
They still have exams here?
Today.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I've done it before. I've sent stuff to the White House and never get any answer. But yeah. Yeah, it's very curious how that third eye, or it's not the third eye, that mystic eye got on the back of the dollar bill. It's in, as I said in the poem, it's in the detached top of the pyramid, which is the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States. And there is this eye staring out over the plains. And it's encircled by a quotation from Virgil's Fourth Eclogue, which I quoted about a great new age begins anew and so forth. And like Nixon doesn't know how to look through this eye, Nixon representing the dominant culture, the WASP mentality, you might say. WASP mentality doesn't know how to look through that eye at all. And I think whoever wrote the dollar bill got that from some Masonic symbolism. And so we're deceiving ourselves if we think that there was some Far Eastern mystic involved in it, or mystique.
Do you spend much of your time speaking at universities?
No, I'm not Allen Ginsberg. I don't know how he does it all the time. Like about twice a year, 3 times a year maybe is enough public exposure for me. I spend a lot of time in Big Sur, and so quite often I feel they really wanted to invite Allen Ginsberg, but they didn't have nerves, so they invited me. So well, I guess everyone. Yeah, it's a line in William Burroughs. Well, it's like Burroughs' cut-up method, sort of signifying like the whole disintegration of the modern world, the materialist culture. I Am Dying Meester was a Latin. I mean, that was spoken by someone from a South American country that Uncle Sam had his foot on, say.
What would you think of an American poet who writes no political thought in an academic?
Well, like most American poets don't, it seems to me, or maybe only 10% do. Yeah, sure. I mean, there's really, like Dylan Thomas said, there's the 2 kinds of poetry, loud and soft. I think it's more accurate to say there's 2 kinds of poetry, public and private. And I read in the anti-draft resistance benefit in Boulder a few weeks ago, and Robert Creeley was on the same program, and he read this long, beautiful love poem, very personal and private. It was a large audience, and afterward I asked him, how can you read these private poems in public? And like, I write lots of private poetry. But see, there's poetry that makes it with a large audience. There we go again, the concern with communication. And other poetry that's so private and hermetic that not many people would get what you're saying. And it's a matter of how much public surface you want to put in your poem. Like, so a poem has a lot of public surface, it'll make it with a large audience. Like these poems, these long poems of mine, this one and other political tirades they're really designed for an audience that doesn't have any particular education and could still get it. It's designed to have a public surface, and then if it's going to be really poetry, not just journalism, it has to have at least one other level or several other levels below the public surface. But see, Creeley is a good example of the antithesis of my poetry. His poetry is so pure and personal and private. But there's many great poets like that. What about, well, whoever you want to name? But after all, it seems to me it's pretty much of a crime to remain silent these days. What's the poet's what's he got this audience for if he's not going to use it except for his own selfish purposes? I mean, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
know about my controversial.
I haven't read the book, but seems obvious what that would be the case.
You
Well,
make references to revolution in the poem and some of your other poems, both explicit and implicit. And I wondered, what exactly do you mean? If you mean one thing about revolution, how do you view it within the context of our society?
yeah, well, you know, that word is getting so, it's thrown around so much now, and I threw it around some more. It's like it's words like vibrations and so forth that it's pretty hard to use it, and you can't very well just give it one definition. The revolution is whatever revolution is for you. Like for me, revolution isn't just a political revolution; it's a revolution of consciousness, which is like is what a lot of other poets and psychedelics have been talking about. The message is the expansion of consciousness. Like if that's what I was getting. Why I was really thought I had a reasonable tone toward Nixon in one passage about trying to get him to expand the area of his consciousness, like if he only could, like if he could only open the doors of perception. I mean, I'm not asking him to take a LSD trip because, like, maybe he doesn't deserve it, or I wouldn't want a general in the Pentagon to take LSD. For one thing, I mean, I'm not putting out, giving you Timothy Leary's line when I say that in the Catholic Church you have to be prepared before you can take the sacrament. Well, it sounds like Leary. So, I mean, you have to have some preparation people for taking some psychedelic. All the trouble, I think, is caused by people who have no preparation and just drop any old chemical that comes along. And like, I shudder with the idea of someone unprepared who is in the military life taking psychedelic drugs. I just think Nixon, he doesn't have to do that, but he's got to expand his, it's this WASP thing. That's a cliche too, I know, but yeah. Who's gonna examine a psychiatrist? Yeah.
Poetry, you were mixing Freudian psychoanalysis with mysticism, which I happen to see interpretations of Freud like Norman O'Brown with the resurrection of body bring this in.
Yeah.
Pure reconciliation, which I only see it has to be reconciled because of this WASP mentality that brought science into Freud. How is that something personal, or could you just give me a general idea?
Well, it's a very eclectic poem. I mean, I'm trying to gather all these different ideas together. A lot of the ideas are opposing. Well, I mean, that's what a poet should do, try and synthesize everything.
You talk about communication. When you're getting thoughts together down in the form of a poem, are you writing, when you're writing a poem, are you writing so that you can communicate it first with other people, or do you first write it so that it comes out, the thoughts as you feel them, without worrying about whether the other people can grasp it? Is that what?
Well, you have to put down the intuitions you get in whatever order you get them. Like, I'm not really concerned with. It's only later when you read it, say, read it into a tape recorder, and then sit back and listen and see whether it's really communicating or not. But certainly not at the beginning. Yeah.
They can try to communicate, but I mean,
get a good rock group and throw yourself in between numbers. 'Cause it happens that the people's attention span is so short, especially these days with all the competition from electronics, and it's especially for poetry, the attention span is very short, and this is really like where Bob Dylan has it all over the poets without guitars, because he's got that guitar backing up his voice, and it really holds the attention. And the single unaccompanied voice has a hell of a hard time competing with that. And, well, you shouldn't try and compete, but there are very, very few poets in this country who can go on the same platform with Dylan, say, or with a rock group, and make it before or after a group. And I think the poet has to have a very extraordinary voice, like Allen Ginsberg's. Ginsberg's about the only one I can think of who can really do it. It's like Dylan's poems they're great long songs, great long poems, great long surrealist poems. The ones before his present album, like the Highway 66 Revisited and back then. These are great long surrealist poems, and he wouldn't get, if he didn't have the guitar, a lot of those corny rhymes wouldn't get by as in a poem, in a spoken poem. So he really needs a guitar as far as I'm concerned, but I mean, but he's still a great poet. I mean, I didn't bring my auto harp, but sometimes I'm getting some benefit where I know there's going to be a lot of electronic competition, I'll bring my auto harp.
But I mean, kids hear Dylan, but I mean like people that just don't hear anything. Like you'll send your poem to Nixon, but he's still. I mean, do you really think that as an artist you're of any power against people thing?
Well, yeah. As long as you can get their attention. Like the trouble is, so many poets gets an audience, and they'll get the attention of this number of people for a limited amount of time, but they'll put them to sleep, or their ideas aren't really original enough to keep anybody awake, or they're not saying anything original. And so you wonder, quite often I go to a poetry reading, I wonder why anyone ever goes back to one, because usually it's so boring.
What I wanted to ask, your opinion about poetry as a theatrical form, and if you had any preference besides the rock and roll groups that you felt would improve.
Well, I don't look at poetry I wouldn't look at it as a theatrical form. I mean, that's almost an insult, but as a matter of communicating, I don't know what your question is now. Really. So.
Well, I just was wondering if you had preferences for how you think it would be most effective to be used theatrically.
Oh.
I know a lot of people.
I don't know. When I've heard poetry spoken with music, it's usually just awful. And poetry and dance worse. Yeah.
Weren't the oral messages in Coney Island of the Mind written before the
Yeah, this was 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now, and like it was an interesting experiment, but like at old style jazz, and most of the musicians, the attitude was, well, like men, go ahead and read your poetry, but we got to blow. And so you ended up sounding like you're hawking fish on a street corner. And with electronic amplification, that makes it almost impossible. I mean, unless it's done in the studio. See, in the studio you get a multi-track recorder. Like I just recorded for the Apple label using various tracks in a studio recording with. Like I have one long poem called Assassination Raga, which I use a tape of an Ali Akbar Khan Sarod Raga, going all the way through the poem and louder and softer, and you can regulate the voice and the music levels, and so you can be heard. But that's, I mean, Ginsberg has a very good solution. He's not really about the only American poet I know that's come up with any real solution to make it in this kind of scene. He first started using symbols, finger symbols, chanting, which this is backing up his voice. Then he now is turned on to singing Blake with a harmonium, and it's really beautiful. He's recording this for Apple too, and it's in fact they were going to record him doing it in St. Paul's Cathedral, London. And this is really angelic sounding. And Blake evidently sang his songs of innocence and experience, but no one knows how they sounded. Didn't have any tape recorders in those days. And so like Ginsberg singing William Blake, it's like Blake has never been heard before. It's really a revelation to hear. And the only word I could describe it is angelic. But, well, let's see someone new.
Yes, I was wondering, what is your aim in writing this poem or other poems? Are you just trying to announce your own personal reaction to what's going on around you, or are you trying to make people more aware of something, or think you're making people more aware?
Both, I hope. I mean,
do you hope to achieve?
what else could you express but your own personal reactions, you know?
Are you hoping to achieve something through this, a change?
Well, I don't know. Have things changed any since some of the poets in this country got a good hearing? Not much. Have things changed any on account of all the people that bought and played Bob Dylan records? Maybe I should. I mean, I'm asking you. Has it? Have they? Well, yeah. Like I should say, people say, what good does it do to march in these peace marches and write all this protest poetry? Well, it seems to me that Johnson's decision not to rerun for office was a direct result of the snowballing peace movement. Direct, concrete result of it, seems to me.
Has any particular poet influenced your work to make collages?
Well, I mean, really dozens or hundreds. No. Yeah. No. I'm reading at San Diego State the day after tomorrow.
Are you going to be at the poetry workshop tomorrow night?
No. Nothing I know of.
What do you think are the odds of America getting more or less enlightened before we blow ourselves up?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, how much time is there left, really? Besides blowing ourselves up, what about just the ecological foul-up of the air and the seas and the... one good thing about this space race is that even on TV they can transmit this beautifully clear image of the Earth. Like in the papers yesterday, I don't have color TV, but the newspapers reported about how beautiful and clear and shining in blue the Earth was from space, surrounded by this great, immense blackness. And a shining blackness like they were having a psychedelic vision, and that's what it's all about. And the same day, the Supreme Court reversed the conviction of Timothy Leary, which was a hopeful sign, because it seemed that the government was actually recognizing that not only outer space existed, but inner space existed too. And finally realized they're both the same. Bradigan has gotten so popular that every New York publisher in sight is calling him up and trying to steal his hat or his Civil War musket or any scrap that he produces these days. He's got avid commercial publishers for him, and for the small presses like City Lights, I always felt the function of a small press or so-called avant-garde press was to discover the undiscovered. I mean, Brautigan is now discovered. I was the first in City Lights Journal to publish parts of Trout Fishing America, and he was around in the 50s in San Francisco. He's one of the few that has made it over through the 60s generation, through the hippie scene, like Brautigan, Ginsberg, David Meltzer. Very, very, very few of the poets from the 50s made it over through the present scene. Brautigan was one of them, but he's a very funny fellow.
In your book, Routines, you propose an organization called BORE, B-O-R-E.
Yeah.
Has anything been done along those lines?
Yeah, I had a letter from somewhere in Southern California about a month ago. Gee, I ought to be able to remember where. That group of students wanted to know whether I would charter a chapter of BORE on their campus. BORE was more or less a facetiously proposed idea for a group that would disrupt cultural events in churches or on campuses or in theaters, or particularly boring ones by established authors, or irrelevant events when there was something much more important going on, like the Living Theater performed in Berkeley, but at the same time the same day there were riots on the streets adjoining at the UC campus, and I really felt like maybe the Living Theater had been upstaged, because what was happening in the street was much more important, and there was further advance than they were. Like the Living Theaters in the streets now. But I guess we had enough.
I was just going to say that Mr. Ferlinghetti will be here for a few minutes, but in the same spirit of BORE, there's a lot of things happening on campus today, which I know many of you are interested in. So I'm going to call a close to the formal program now. And as I said, Mr. Ferlinghetti will be here for a few more minutes. Thank you very much.